give me.
Okay, I started recording, yeah. Okay, so write a program to calculate the change to be dispensed from a vending machine. The machine accepts a single dollar bill. The item the machine costs between 5 cents and $1. Okay, so it could be like, all the 5, 10, 20, 25, 30, and so on and so forth, right? The way explained here. So example, so let's say if you have a price of 30 cents, then it will say you bought 35 cents and you gave me $1. The change is 2 quarters, 1 dime, and a nickel, right? Um, I didn't realize that I gave you a little harder problem. uh, but
Yeah, it's like an
it's a
interview
good problem.
question.
It's a very good uh it's it's a very good one. It's an interview
It
question,
is.
but it is a good one. It will tickle your brain.
It
So
did for a really long time.
so if you think of it, right, any problem, if you think of it, I would say boil down to, I would always do it on a paper using paper and pen, right? First of all. So in this case, you have a vending machine that accepts single dollar bill, right? Which means a dollar bill is 100 cents, right? So you can always have a same, normalize it so that you have a same currency, right? So you have 100 cents you're putting in, right? And then the item value is, in this example, is 35 cents. So can anyone tell me how much money I would get back?
How
65.
well is the number?
65, right? So that you can easily figure out. Now, um, uh, then, you need to figure out the change. Now, in this case, it does not say that you need an optimum way of doing things. But if you want to minimize the number of coins, right? So if it's 65, I don't think it has said optimize it, right? I
Right.
could give 65 is what? 12 5 cents if I just take minimum 12 5 cents and then one more, so 13 5 cents. Yeah, so I can do that way. Or if I take the 10, I would have a 6 dimes and a nickel, right? But the best algorithm would be I would look at is it great, if you want to use an if and else statement, right? So this one actually you can use for loop and also if and else. That's why it's a beautiful problem. So you can look at the 65, is it anywhere between the range I'm given, like 5, 10, 20? So pick the biggest one. I would pick 25, right? Because quarter is the biggest one in a way.
Mhm.
So once you remove that from the quarter, how much money you have left? From 65, you remove a quarter, right? How much money you have left? 40 cents, right? All right,
Mhm.
do this again. How much money, what is the next coin you can pick for 40 cents? Again, a quarter, right? So you keep subtracting, and then at the end of it, you will get a dime or a, so and then dime and a nickel, right? So that's the best algorithm because you're always using all your big coins first, right? And at one point you'll have 15 cents left. And then at that point, you cannot pick anything more than 25, any more than nickel, right? I mean, sorry, dime. So then you use a dime and then you have 5 cents left and then you use a nickel. So
So
always
once we're at 15, we just deduct 10.
yes,
Is that
because you
correct?
cannot there is no
Right.
15, right? So the
Mhm.
next logical one is 10.
Mhm.
So, and then once you use 10, you only have 5. So you need to if you, I mean, I'm gonna give you a hint, right? You need an array of all the possible coins. Agree? So you need what? You need a quarter, you need a nickel, and you need a dime. It doesn't say pennies, but yeah, you need that, right? So you need that in an array, and then every time you have something, you need to see, is this greater than what I have? So you need to find the first number, that the biggest one, and then you use it. Okay. I would say try it. So now you have the sort of like a solution. I would say first, always write in a pseudocode. The pseudocode would be, we can look at one of the example today, writing pseudocode, right? Once you, and this is because this is a homework, I don't want to give out the full solution, but today we can, for one of the problems, I can show you how you write pseudocode, because pseudocode is so essential. If you just start thinking about writing a code, it's not going to work for you. And I've made that mistakes many times. If I go for an interview, first thing I do is I write pseudocode. Okay. And that works brilliantly for me. So I'll show you how to write pseudocode. This is a good point that you brought. And then if you have any problems, you can send me the solution on Canvas. And then I can, don't send me in Discord where everyone can see it, but send me in the Canvas, and I can show you. Okay. But try.
Okay.
I think this is a very good one. Yeah, I really like it. Cool. All right, let's start with arrays.
So you mentioned like something about pseudocode. Is it just like the explanation in words? Is that correct?
Yes, you think you don't think in terms of code. You think, try to solve the problem manually. That's your pseudocode. Okay.
That's
and then
easy.
yes.
100 minus 35, 65,
Yes.
done.
Yeah. And then you can say, okay, because there's always, if you any code that you see, you will have two things. You will have a loop, and you have a decision making. No matter what is given, you always end up having two things. You have to make a decision, which is using if and else statement, and you have to repeat something, right? In that case, you're making a decision. Is this greater than do I have money? So let's say I have 15 cents left, right? Can I use a quarter? No. Can I use a dime? Yes. That's an if and else statement, right? So you compare what you have versus what the value in the array is, right? So that's how you want to think. And if you boil down any problem, you will always find two things: a for loop and or an if else statement. Okay, so that's how you want to approach this. Okay, we can actually, I mean, for 162, I've extended the homework by 1 week because, it was a little difficult. And so, yeah.
Is it okay with Liliana?
It's up to her.
That will help.
I also extended. I suggest.
Yay.
But,
Yes.
yes, but also like what we said last class, you can use everything we did last class. Maybe a hint also can be just remember how we solved the grades.
Mhm.
Like, yeah. or yeah, I don't want to give more because
I think it's just like what confused me is that you mentioned that we need to use the math objects. And that was like, oh, one more thing to do.
yeah, but that's because you need to kind of run the number. But you can start without it and see, then you're going to notice there is something missing. And that's when you're going to know, like, oh, I need to apply it there. Isn't it, Jamil? Like, I think that's how you can figure out where to apply it. Because if you start doing, like the professor mentioned, the the pseudocode or start even like just doing the math there, you will notice like, oh, this is not rounding. And then you're going to know. I'm giving you that. It's missing. Yeah. Yeah.
But let's look at we'll solve a couple of problems using pseudocode, and that would be a good lesson for you to learn. Okay. Let's see. Someone says, "Is there more than one way to get the answer?" Yes. Also, one thing I always say that, you know, when somebody asks a question in an interview, there's an easier way to do things, and then there's a harder way to do things. If there's no constraints, so constraints are, you know, so if I say, only give me the best, I want the minimum number of coins, right? That's a constraint. If nobody gave constraint, I would give you all the pennies. 65 pennies, right? But in this case, there's no penny, so you have to use a different coin. But you know, so you always ask the question, do I have any constraints? If I don't have a you know, because oftentimes, you know, any problem, there's some sort of constraint. So you can always look at the constraints and figure it out. I'll give you an interesting example. I had a few years back, I had a Google interview. This was the last round, and I had my hopes high. You know, I can really make a lot of money if I go to Google. That was, and also learn a lot, and you know, it's a good to have something in a resume. So I had all my hopes high, right? And the first couple of interviews, because they were like whole day interview, right? Morning to evenings. I think they were like six hours of interview. After like fourth hour, my brain was fried. But this guy asked me a question. He said, "We haven't learned this, but you know, you can describe color in a hex. Hex is basically like if I want to describe white color, it's a pound sign and FFF. So I can write it like this. Pounds. Where is it? Yeah, I can
Yeah, we
write
know
it.
that one from
FF.
CSS.
Yeah,
Mhm.
CSS, right? So this
Right.
is
Mhm.
white. You can also write this in a shorter format, which is FFF. Okay.
Mhm.
And then Google folks always come up with this interesting example that you cannot find anywhere in the Google. So he said to me that if I gave you a color like A, B, C, D, E, and F, okay, I want you to convert this into 3-digit number. Can you do that? So FFF to F, 6F to 3F is easy, because what it does, it's every 2F, it's if they're equal, it basically takes a 1F, right? So if I'm given FFF, this means I can expand it by just doubling every F, right?
Mm.
How do I do this? So first of all, I realized that if I cannot get the exact number here, so this will be a loss. And it's almost like if I say 12.5 and I want to make it an integer, I would give you 12, right? But this would not be an accurate number representation. So it's a loss. There's a loss of 0.5, right? So I can do the same thing from here to here, but then there will be some sort of loss. So I told the guy that there will be some loss. And he said, okay, loss is fine, but I want to get the closest to this, right? So the first thing that came to my mind is, what if I just convert this to, um, you know, hex to decimal, right? Do some mathematics and then convert it back to hex. But then I realized, I don't think this guy asked me a simple question because they're at Google. So I did the most complex algorithm that possible because I created constraints in my head, which was not there, right? And after like 45 minutes of pain, I then there were like few bugs in it and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, you know, this is the best I can do. And then the guy was like, okay. So before he left, he said, why didn't you just simply converted this into a decimal? And I was like, oh, I thought you would not ask me a simple question like that. Okay, so so always read the question first, understand what is the easiest way to do things. Don't try too hard. That's why I say. So I learned my lesson, but I always communicate back to the interviewer, say, hey, you know what? This is what I'm gonna do. Is that okay? I did not do that in an interview. Because had I just done that, I said, okay, you know what? I can convert this to a decimal, and this is an algorithm. Is that okay? He would have said yes, because that's what he was expecting. Instead, I went the hard way. But anyway, that was the lesson learned. Okay, so arrays. So if I want to represent something a little bit more complex, I can use arrays. So let's say if I have a grocery bag, right, with bunch of items in it, and I want to describe my bag, I cannot use a simple string. I have to use an array. So let's say I can say bag equal to, and to write an array, you would have a square bracket. Okay, so think of this like as a bag, and then inside you would have items. So let's say, I don't know, milk. I'm gonna put some grocery items in it, candy, and some tea. Okay. So again, square brackets, and then you put, it could be anything. It could be a number or a string or a mix of anything, but you need commas in between. You can also think of as a queue at the, let's say, movie theater or something, right? You're in a queue. This guy's milk is standing first in the line, candy is standing second in the line, and a tea is standing third in the line. If I ask you how many people are standing in the line, I would say, oh, there are 3 people total, right? Who is the first? I would say milk is the first, right? So usually you would, in a normal line, you would say, this guy is first, this guy is second, and this guy is third, right? But in programming, it works a little differently. Instead of first, you say this guy is 0. This guy is first, or it's called an index, which means this is a 0th index, this is a first index, and this is a second index. And it's always sequential, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it doesn't repeat, right? So the only difference between a normal line and this is it starts from index 0 instead of 1. So if you think of like the last index is always 1 less than the length, right? So this is the fundamental of an array. If you remember this would help you solve all the problems, right? So usually in an array, you can say, oh yeah, there's a question, Angie.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if the array must have the same type of variables. Like in this case, there's just a string.
Same type of variable?
Yeah, or can you mix?
Yeah,
Like
you can do mix.
you
So
could do-
I can say, 0, true, whatever, different kinds of I can mix and match, right? So it is possible. Usually you don't do that, but it is possible. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so what kind of question you can ask in an array? You can say, who's first in the line, right? Or what is if you think of this as a bag, I would want you to visualize it as a bag where the milk at the bottom, so the one on the left side is at the bottom, one on the right side is at the top, right? Imagine that's your bag, right? Because if you think of this in a bag, whatever you put first goes inside, right? And then you put something else, and then you put something else, right? So whatever is on the top is the last thing you added. right? So if I want to add something to this bag, I can say bag dot push. Let's say if I want to add some water on the top, right? So what it does, it adds the top of the bag, which means it's going to be after T, right? You know why it's always good to add something on the top? Because if something is at bottom, you have to empty the whole bag, right? If I want to add something at the bottom, I have to empty the whole bag, put the water in, then the milk, the candy. When I say water, it's the bottled water, not the flowing water. And then the candy and the tea on the top, right? So, but if something, well, the best, easiest way to add something to this bag is on the top, which is on the right side. Okay. So push does exactly the same thing. It adds on the top. So if I console log bag, I would get milk, candy, tea, and water, right? And the reason for that is, think of this way. I mean, this is a small array. Imagine if they have 1 million elements in the array. Like the line is like 1 million elements, and somebody cuts in the line. What happens? Everyone has to move, right? So the easiest thing to do is stand at the end of the line, which is here, right? So push is exactly the same thing. I don't know why they say call it push. There should have been an easier, simpler word than push. You can also think of as a Lego, you know, like a Legos, you put a Lego on the top of each, and then on the whatever new Lego you put, always put it in the top. And you can removing is also happens on the top, right? So that's easy. So if I want to remove something, it's a pop. So bag dot pop. I don't have to say where am I removing from. It always does it from the top. So from the bag, you can add something on the top and you can remove something from the top, right? All right, let's try this out. Let me know if you have questions. So this is the easiest way to do something within an array in terms of speed wise. So but once I push it and pop it out, the back should remain exactly the same because I did it here, right? So I should not see any water here now because I pushed it and I popped it out right away. But if I put a console log in between here, I would see it. Oh, Angie, do you still have a question? Okay, okay, I'm gonna. Okay. All right. What if I want to access something? Usually accessing means you can say, give me the second item from the list, right? Or give me the first one, or give me the last one, you know, something like that. So you can use the index to do that. So the best way to get it is, just gonna comment it out so that you can see it, is you can say bag and then square bracket, and then you just provide the index. right? So this would give me milk. If I pass 1, this would give me candy. If I pass 2, this would give me tea, right? So instead of bag, if I say 0, and run this, I would get milk, right? Which is the first item. Okay. So usually pretty much anything you learn, you have to add something new, you have to get something from the whatever you're trying to get use, you have to update something, right? Or you have to delete something. So we looked at how to add something at the end, remove something from the end, and access it from anywhere. So what if I want to now add or remove something from the anywhere, not only from the end? Okay. There is a function called splice, which is pretty interesting function. It's a multi-purpose function that does, you can remove it, you can replace it, you can add it, everything within one function. So you would say bag dot splice. Okay. The first thing you do is where exactly you want to operate this. So you need to provide an index. So let's say if I want to operate here on the candy, right? I want to do something at candy. So I would provide an index. The second thing you do is, do you want to remove something? So you can say, oh, I want to remove number of items. I want to remove 1 item or 2 items or whatever. So let's say if I say I want to remove 1 item. Okay. In that case, if I run this, candy would be removed because I say index 1 should be removed, right? So you would have milk and tea. If I say remove 2 items, which means candy and tea would be removed, right? Starting index 1. So first is the index, and then how many items I want to remove. So only milk would be left. But if I try to remove 3 items, it doesn't have 3 items after index 1, right? So let's see what it does. It still gives me milk because I can say 30 item. It doesn't really care. It just deletes stuff that it finds, right? So it is pretty cool. If I don't remove anything, I can simply put 0. This keeps the array as it is, right? So, and then lastly, you can add something to it at that index. So let's say if I want to add water. So at the index 1, then I would do index 1, which is here. Don't delete anything, so 0, and add water. So what's going to happen is it's going to add water here. Candy would move 1 place, and then tea would move 1 place, right? If I run this, you would get milk, water, candy, and tea. Okay. And you can add way more. I can add, let's say, a B, C. It's all get injected in here. So whichever index I picked, it's all get injected in between. So you would see milk and A, B, C, and then candy and tea, right? So this is a very useful function. You provide index where exactly you want to do stuff, how many items you want to remove, and how many items you want to add. Okay, let's practice a little bit. So let's say if I wanna, my final result should be this. I wanna have a milk, water, let's say pepper and tea. Okay, how do I get this? The second would be I want to get empty the entire array. I don't want anything in there. Okay, how do I get it? And then third would be, okay, let me remove this so that we can see things more clearly. And third would be I only want T. If you finish it, put it in the chat, private chat, all three solutions. Using splice function. So yeah, the using the splice function, you have the original bag, which is this. It's got 3 items, right? I want the bag. If I console log it, the first solution should be, what should I use? How do I splice this so I get this? How do I splice it so I get this? And how? So there's 3 different solutions. Okay, so I want you to give me 3 solution where I would get each of these results. Does that answer a question? An often best thing is trial and error, right? You try something and you get something, and then oh yeah, this is how it works. So then I'm gonna adjust it, right? Until I get my answer. And that makes you realize that this is how it works, right? So try that. If you have the solution, send me in a private chat. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna give you the first one, and then maybe you can. So let's say the first one is if I compare it, so milk I want to stay as the same, right? Tea, it remains the same at the end. But instead of candy, I'm replacing water and pepper, right? Which means everything's happening at index 1, right? So if I want to write, I would just obviously I would say index 1, right? And I need to delete this because I need to remove candy, which is 1. So I'm gonna say remove candy. And what am I adding? I'm adding water and pepper. So you just put what you're removing here and then what you adding here. So you would say water and pepper, right? So you look at it and say what is removed from which index, right? Starting which index. So yeah, usually when things are removed, it starts from here and then everything else is removed, right? So find the first index when change starts to happen. Okay, so that's your index you want to start with, right? In this case, the change started happening at candy, right? Because milk is exactly the same. From candy onwards, the change are happening, right? So since we're removing candy, only one item, I say 1, and then these are the new things, so I say this. So you can use it that way. So I remove one thing, I added 2 things. So there should be obviously 1, and there should be two items here, right? That's for sure. So if you look at that and see, how do I get to these guys?
I have a question. What's the backsplice 1 means?
Splice 1 means this is the index at which the things
Okay,
are happening, right? So as I said, where am I removing? So you can see the candy is being removed, right?
Yeah,
So
in the
that's
array
index 1.
number 1.
Yes,
And
index
then
1.
the next one is whatever needs to be removed.
Yes.
So you don't need to add, that's what I was trying to do before. I was trying to add pepper using the bag push. That's how I was like trying to do it. And then I had hard. And removing,
Yeah.
I used the bag pop instead of putting it in the bag splice.
Because I say splice, right? You can actually use multiple splices if you want.
I see.
Remove everything, add milk, add water, add pepper. Remember, I did not give you constraints. But if you want to do the optimal way, you want to do it in a one single splice, right? All right, since we have to move forward, let me give you the solution for the second one, right? So second one, there's nothing here, right? Which means everything is starting happening at the 0th index, right? Because everything after changing. So you want to look at where exactly is happening. So it's happening from the milk, right? So the way I would do is, this is the 0th index, first of all. How many items are being removed? There's nothing in here, which means I'm removing 1, 2, and 3 items, right? So I would just say 3 items, right? Which means nothing would remain in the array. If I run this, I would get nothing, right? For T, the same thing. I'm removing these 2 items, which means it's starting the change starts to happen from milk, right? Which means starting from 0, I'm removing 2 items, 1 and 2. So, right? And that remains T, right? So, yeah. All right. So this is how array, adding, removing, replacing all of these works, right? What if I want to iterate through a bag? So instead of bag, I'm just going to use numbers now, because now we want to understand how number works in this sense, right? So let's say I have a bunch of numbers, 1, 3, 5, and 7, right? And I want to print them out one by one, because oftentimes, you want to operate on them, like you want to do something with every single number. So how do we do that? So there is a special for loop that lets you do that. And you can say for num of nums. And this is much easier syntax than the other for loop, right? So this gives me access to every single. So what happens in between is you get every single number, and the number is going to be this, right? So if I print this, what do I get? It will let me print every single number, right? Oops, sorry, not print. I also teach Python, so so in this case, I can see 1, 3, 5, 7, right? So this gives me access to every single number one by one. So num's going to be 1, then 3, then 5, and 7. Okay. That means if I want to add all the numbers, so let's say if I want to add all the numbers in this array, which would be 1 plus 3, 4 plus 5, 8, plus 7, 15, right? So the way to do it is I need a running total. And then I set it to 0, right? And then all I need to do is, because I'm getting every number one by one here, right? So I would just say, whenever you get that number, just add it to the total. That's it, right? So the total is going to be total plus that number. Okay, so it adds. So initially my total is 0. Then the first number shows up, so it adds 0 to 1. So my total is 1. Then 3 shows up, so that's 3 plus 1, so that the total is 4. And then 5 shows up, so that's 9. 5 plus 4 is 9, and then 7 shows up, right? So if I run this, oh, sorry, I have to print the total, right? So I would say console log total, and this should give me the total of 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7, 16, right? So this is one application of doing something. Basically, you can process every item in the array, right? For loop lets you do that. Okay, what if I want to skip 3? So I do not want to add 3. I want to have total of other things except 3. So the total would be 1 plus 5, 6, 6 plus 7, 13. Okay. Total is a it's a variable, which means I have to use a let here. Sorry. It's a variable. Nums is also, shoot, I also forgot here. Thank you. So these are all variables. All the blue ones are variables, right? We already know the nums is a variable. Total is a variable because I've defined is. Num is, this you can just do, this basically is a placeholder, which means, I can say a, which means every number from here, right? So, but I chose to say num because it sounds nice, num of num. So this can be any variable, but ultimately you want to, whatever variable you define here, you want to use it here, right? So let's write this. And then the way I wanna do is have skip 3. How would we do that, first of all? Anyone? How would we do that? How do we skip something? Remember in the beginning I said there are only 2 things possible. You loop something, and what else you do? You make decisions, right? How do you make decisions?
Is it -1?
-1?
Because it's array number 1.
Yeah, so you can -1. Oh, that's a clever one. So you were saying yeah, that works.
Okay.
This one, right? Yeah. See, I did not put any constraints, which which means yes, this would be 13, right? So yeah. So this is one way of doing that. But let me put a constraints now. I want something to do inside this for loop. Think the same way. You want to do the minus here, or you can skip something inside here. So this one, I want to keep it clean, just have a total here. This is also one of the solution, what you suggested. But this time I just want to do something inside this for loop so that I can get exactly the same results. So at the end of, I want 13. In a simple language, I want to skip 3 or index 1, right? However you like.
Did you just compare the number? Just say,
Your voice is kind of muffled. Can you say it again? Sorry.
oh, can you hear me now? Hello?
Oh, can you type it in? I think your voice is a little bit muffled. I don't know if anyone can hear. I could probably. So okay, you can just write it in the chat. Can we just, yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea. You check if, but, so yeah, your approach is right. You need to check if I have a 3, right? If I have a 3, ignore it. That should be the approach, right? Or if it's an index 1, but I don't have an index here, unfortunately. This way of doing things, I don't have an index. So only thing I can do is I can ignore if I see number 3, right? So yes, your approach is correct. No, you don't say 3 equal to 3. 3 is right on one side, but you're comparing, because 3 equal to 3 is always what? True, right? You're comparing something else. What is it that you're comparing? What is it that gives you every single number?
Total.
The ampersand?
Number. Number is the only one that gives you every single number, right? Total is a running total, right? When I say num of nums, which this is giving me every single number, right? As I said. So if I print nums, it gives me, first 1, then 3, then 5, and 7, right? So this is where the pseudocode works, right? So if I want a total of, let's say, Yeah, you want to check if if 3 is there, then ignore it. That's what I'm saying, right? Or the other way of saying is if you add everything but 3, right? It's the same way, right? So the pseudocode would be, if I want to add everything, how would I add it manually? So I would take 1, right? Let's just do it manual math, which everyone can do, right? So if I want to add all the numbers here, I would start with 1, right? So I would say, okay, 1. Then I would say plus. Okay, I'm going to ignore 3. So I'm not going to do anything with the 3. Then I want to add 5. Then I want to add 7, right? This means I have to iterate through this array, right? So the for loop lets me do that. For loops, when I say let num of nums, if I just simply console log it, forget about the total, console log num, and also I'm going to comment this out, is going to give me every number one by one, right? So it gives me 1, 3, 5, and 7. Okay. So num is first it's 1, then it's 3, then it's 5, and then it's 7. So when it's 1, I can add this in a total. When it's 3, I can add in this total. So all I have to do is total equal to total plus num, right? It just keeps adding into this total, right? So I receive it, okay, go here in the total. I receive it again, go in the total, go in the total. Except if I want to skip 3, I have to say, if I see 3, which is a comparison, right? So I can say, if num is equal to 3, don't do anything, right? Else, add it to the total. Yeah. Or I can say, add in the total if number is not equal to 3. It's the same thing, right? And either should work. This is more optimal because then I don't have an empty if. Kind of looks kind of weird. But yeah, so this is how it works. Any questions? This will take a little bit time practice. Okay. This kind of stuff gives you, because this is not normally how we think, right? So, but once you have that mindset, every problem you see, you would say, oh, I want to add everything. I need to iterate through, which means I have a for loop, and I would have some sort of variable which gives me every value. And then I just need to have a total and just push that into that total, right? And at the end, I'll have every number added, right? So that's how your thinking would work. But anyway, so that's how I would do that.
So what would you do if you needed to add a number?
If
Would
I
you add
want
it just to the top? If you
to
wanted to add one more number.
add one more number, oh yeah, just add it here, right?
Okay.
Like this.
But you cannot erase it to remove it from there.
I can ignore it.
Mm.
I can say if number is 3 or number is not equal to 8, then add it. So this way you can ignore it. I can say if number is not equal to 8, this is how you ignore something, right? Yeah. But if I want a new number, this would get added to the total, right? So yeah. The idea behind is you have to think of this way. Are people giving you money, right? Let's say people coming to give you a donation, and there's a queue, and everyone's got some money. So this guy has $3, $1, this guy's $3, $5. So there's a queue, right? And you want to know how much money you collected. So you need to process everyone, right? So you say, okay, first person come in here, give me the money. So initially my total is 0. I don't have any money. The first person comes in. So this is the loop, right? This is the way you operate. The first person comes in, so it gives you the money. So what do? You add it to the total, right? And then that guy leaves. And then the second person come in, which is this guy, and he gives you the money and it leaves. And then this guy leaves and this guy. But let's say if you don't want money from this guy, which has $3, you can say, okay, if it's not this guy, then add it. Otherwise, don't do anything, right? So you can skip someone because this person need his more money. We can't take his donation. Okay. So let me put this in the chat so you can remember it. And then we can move forward. Objects are much simpler in that sense. So if I simply want to have items in a bag, array is the perfect way of doing things, right? But what if I want to have, I want 3 eggs, 2 waters, and 3 chocolate milk. Okay, I cannot simply use the array, right? In that case, my bag would look different. I would say bag is equal to, I have to use something called object. And objects are defined using curly brackets. So no longer square bracket. Okay, so you need to use a curly bracket. And then you would say, and remember, it's 2 things. I want 2 candies, 3 milk, and 2 tea, right? So you would say tea and the value, comma, candy and its value, comma, milk and its value. Okay, so now we added another parameter, which is value. So you have a key and a value. Now this doesn't run by index anymore. There is no 0, there's no first, there's no last. Okay, think of this as you have stuff on the table. You know, there are 2 candies, there are 3 teas, there's milk, right? On the table, sitting there, right there in front of you. Nobody's first, nobody's last, because there is no index here, right? So if I want to say, and this is much easier, if I want to say, how many tea do I have? Then I would say bag. And I would pass the tea, okay? And this would give me 2. Or easier way to do this is this. And this would give me. So you can do either. Okay. So in a way, this is your index, which means you cannot repeat it. So I cannot have like another T. I can have only one time, right? So like if you have a grocery bag and let's say your husband or wife say, oh, get some tea, 2 T's, right? So you're not going to put T1 and T2. You would just, have say, okay, 2 tea, 4 candies, and 6 milks, like this, right? So everything has to be unique in that sense, right? So this is how you can access things using a dot operator. So if I want a candy, I can say bag.candy. If I want a milk, I can say bag.milk, and it gives me this value. Okay. What if I want to replace something? Or I can say, let's say if I want to increase candy by 1, so I can say I can say, or tea by 1, let's say. So I can say bag.t equal to 3, right? So it changes 2 to 3. So this is how you can access it and also update it, which is much simpler. There are no indexes. But if I want to delete t, it is also pretty simple. You would just say delete and then bag.t. So and then adding a new item is also pretty simple. So let's say if I want to add mangoes here, I can say bag.mango equal to, let's say 12, right? So it's very simple in this case. You just say the bag dot whatever, you can change it. The delete is only this way, delete and then this. But otherwise you just set the value. You can update it the same way. You can add a new value the same way, right? This is much simpler. There's no push, there's no pop, right? Because everything is on a table. So I say, oh, there are two t's. I want to add another t. You would say, okay, bag.t equal to 5. You want to get the how many t's you have? You can say bag.t and you get the value back, right? When I delete something, you would say delete bag.t. So everything you do with dot operator here. Any questions? Okay. So this is going to be more fun when we introduce mix objects, which is pretty cool. Let's say if I want to iterate through this, remember we used, number of numbers, right? If I want to iterate through this, I would say for let's use item, right? Item in bag. So instead of off, you use in keyword. Okay. And then print the item. It's exactly the same thing. It goes through each item one by one. And then give you the result. So let's see. Oops. Why do I say print? Console log. Right? So we'll print each item one by one. But if I want to print the how many tea I have or how many candy I have to use, the back, something like this, bag item. This is where I cannot use dot item. I have to use bag item, right? And so this would give me, T2 candy for, things like that.
So how do you memorize the syntax? Because when I read for let item in a bag, doesn't make sense to me.
This one, you mean this?
Yes.
Yeah, it's basically called iteration. Okay.
Mm.
Which means for basically go one by one. Think of for is like one by one, right? So think of this way, give me one by one item in bag. And this gives you one by one, right?
Mm.
for array, it's for off in object for in. So the only thing you have to remember is in and off. That's the only thing. But you'll get used to it once you have it. Okay.
Is that gonna print the same, that line number 10 and 11?
10's gonna print the item, which is the left side, and then 11's gonna print the value. Right? So this is gonna print T, this is gonna print the 2. So we already know each item is tea, candy, milk, right? So 1 by 1. So that's pretty simple. But if I say this value, then I would have to get each of the tea. So once I get tea, I just pass it to the bag. Remember, you can access it like this. You can say bag.t, right? But in this case, because item is a variable, I cannot say item because there's no such thing as item here, right? So I have to use square bracket and pass item because it's a variable. So then it would give me the right side. That's why I'm using back square bracket item. Again, if you do few of these, you will get used to it. Initially, it gives you it's a little weird, but yeah. Okay, knowing this, I'm gonna give you a small exercise. I'll give you 5 minutes to do that. What if I want to know, I want to add all these. So all the items in the bag. So this would be 2 plus 4 plus 6. That would be what, 12, right? So you already have a for loop. You already know that I can access item like this. You can access each of these values like this. I want to print console log. Also, I'll give you the hint LD, right? So I can running total equal to 0. And if I print total, I should get 12 here, right? What do I do inside here to get this? Any question? I guarantee you, if you do 5 of these, your brain will just get used to it. Oh, this is how it works, right? So it's a new paradigm for you. So if you're a little bit confused, understandable.
Can we do just like inside the for loop?
Yeah.
Total equal total plus bag item.
Yep, that's it.
So then in this bracket.
Start. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. So all you need to do is this total equal to total plus bag item, because this is giving me each of these, right? So first, this guy comes in and gives me 2. Add into the total. Then this guy comes in, add this into the total. This guy comes in, I add this into the total. Right? Okay. One more. What if I do not want to add candy in here? How do I do that? Now you should know, right?
The comparison.
Should
Yes, comparison, some sort of comparison, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to make a decision. In order to process something inside a bag, you have to use for loop. So that's called iteration, right? If you want to do something different for one of the items or two of the items, you have to use comparison, right? As I said, always two things. You can loop through something or you can make a decision by comparison. So how do you do that?
We need to check if there is a T in the back. So I guess if
Or candy. I want to skip candy. Yeah.
you wanna
That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah. You want to skip something. Yeah. So you want to say if it's candy, don't do anything. Otherwise, add it, right? That's what you want to do. Or you can say if it's not candy, add it. Same thing.
So you do if bag item or just if item? If item it's different. Wait, let me think.
Exactly last time what you did, right? So if item is not equal to candy, then do this, right? Then add it. So the way it works is the first item comes, right? It says, is item not equal to candy? So is T not equal to, right? Yes. So it adds it. Is candy is not equal to candy? No, it's false, right? So it adds it. Sorry, it skips it. Is milk not equal to candy? Yes, milk is not equal to candy, right? So looping and decision making. That's it. Okay, I'm gonna put this in the chat so you guys can look at it. Any questions? All right, now comes a part which you can, so basically you can explain, you can describe pretty much anything using object. So we're gonna mix the objects and arrays. Okay. How do we do that? So let's say if I want to describe BCCI, right? Berkeley, BCC, right? Berkeley City College. Would I use an object or an array?
It depends. What are we gonna put inside?
So if I want to describe something, you always want to have an object, because let's say name of BCC is obviously BCC, right? Or I can put the whole name, Berkeley City College. Address of BCC is some address. I'm just gonna say BCC address. I don't remember the address, right? Let's say if I want to say how many teachers, right? This is where I want to use an array, right? Teacher Joan, teacher Peter, whatever, right? Yeah. So I have used mix of object and array in here. So you can describe pretty much anything using a combination of it, right? So if I want to get the first teacher from here, how do I get it?
We need to access the object and the array, right?
Yes. So obviously, remember I told you accessing from object is pretty easy, right? So I'm gonna make your life a little bit easier. So I would say teachers would give me this array. Now I need John in here. How do I get John?
Index 1 or 0.
0, yeah.
Or look for John.
Yeah, you just say 0, right? Which is John. If I want Peter, I would say 1, right? So BCC teachers index 1 give me Peter, 0 would give me. Now, instead of John and Peter, what if I want to get a little bit complex? So I would use a mix of that. So I can say name of the teacher is John, okay? And his age is, let's say, 37. And then I have another teacher, which is Peter. But in this sense, name is Peter. And then age is 40. Okay. So if I format this, I would get something like this. Okay. Now I want to get the age of John. How do I get this?
Do you have to specify that you want, like, maybe you add another number?
I want to get 37 basically.
How did you access the second item that is in name? Oh, no, wait.
Maybe after teachers dot age.
Yes, teachers.age. But in this case, it's the first teacher, so I would say 0.age. Remember, if it's an array, so think of this way. If I have a curly bracket, it's an object, right? So I have to use a dot. So in this case, if I want to get here, for example, I have to start navigating from here. So the first thing I would do is, okay, what is BCC? It's an object. So I would say BCC dot, and I am looking for something teacher under teacher, right? So I would say teachers. Then teacher is an array, which means I cannot use dot operator. I have to use index, right? So I'm looking for the first teacher. So 0. Inside I have an object because there's a curly bracket, which means I have to use a dot operator. So if I'm looking for age, I would say, right? What if this teacher has children? Okay. Kate and Maya. Okay. This teacher doesn't have any children. So I want to know how many children does John have? How do I get it?
Hmm.
Or what's the first child's name? Just look at the square bracket, just follow the brackets all the way.
Probably instead of age, children, and then in the square brackets will be 0.
Okay. So children and then 0. That's it.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
But how many? That's the question.
Yeah, how many? Because it's an array, you can simply say length of the
Length.
length
Ah.
of the array would give you the number of children. Okay, so it's actually, you don't get overwhelmed by it. All you have to do is follow the brackets all the way and you'll get your answer, right? This is so anything that you want to describe can be, so if you look at your Facebook or Instagram profile, this is how it is. So let's say if I want to describe a profile, right, on your Facebook, or I don't think anyone uses Facebook anymore. Well, some people do. But let's say it's an Instagram profile, right? So first thing is going to have name. So it's exactly how this is stored, right? Let's say John's profile. His relationship status. Let's say he is single. Well, because it's the right side, you want to put, or it's complicated. I don't know. Nowadays, that's the common status. But he's got some children.
Complicated children.
Yes. Okay. And then they all have age, well, name and age, right?
Teenagers.
Yeah, some teenagers, right? Name is Maya, and age is, let's say 5, right? And then, yeah, it was Checo, let's say Joe, you know, yeah, it's too complicated for him right now. 2 young kids. So this is how actually your Instagram profile would look like. So you can pretty much represent anything if you want to mix arrays, and anytime you have a number of things, you just use an array. Anytime when you have properties, you use objects and then mix and match, right? So, and then, if I want to know age of the first child, okay, here's another one. Now I'm gonna throw you a curveball around. I want to know total age of John's children. How do I do that?
I guess we start by accessing the object profile
Okay, let's do that.
and then
Profile dot
to access the
Children.
children.
Okay, good.
Then
Children.
it's an
Okay.
array, so
What was the question? How many kids?
Yeah, how many kids? Sorry, the total age of John's children. So this should give me 7, right? 5 plus 2.
mm,
A hint, I had to iterate through the children, right? Because it's a square bracket, I have to use off. So I can say for let child of profile children. Okay, because the square bracket, remember, I'm just only looking at this now, right? Because profile.children is this, right? This would give me what? This would give me each child one by one. So I need a running total, first of all. So I can say let total equal to 0, right? First of all. Then inside, I would get this one first time and then this second time. So if I want to get the age, I would say total equal to total plus child.age, right? Because this is the child, and I can access the age because it's a curly bracket, right? That's it. And then if I do console log total, this should give me 7. Let's see if it does. Right? just follow the brackets. We remember arrays, square brackets, index uses index. If you want to loop through it, use for off loop, object, curly brackets. You can use key and values, right? And you can use a dot operator to access the property and its value. And so when you mix it, you just have to follow the bracket, and then your scope becomes smaller and smaller, right? So if you do 5 or 6 of these, your brain would like, okay, yeah, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. So if I give you even more complicated objects, this is how actually JavaScript works. Inside, when you load your Instagram profile, it first loads your profile. It has an object like this gets loaded in your phone. Okay. And then I don't know if they have relationship status anymore, but I'm just, whatever, your profile photo, right? So there'll be a photo that gets loaded and everything. So this is how all the complex data on your page gets decided. Okay. So there you go. Let's look at the, let me stop. Okay, let's look at the homework quickly.
I just wanted to ask one more thing.
Sure.
If you could share your screen. You mentioned a couple times properties.
Mhm.
So you mean like properties of the object?
Yes.
What do you mean
So
by properties?
these are properties of the object. So name, status. They're
What
called
is that?
properties of the object. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you.
And you can say elements, you can say properties. It's just one way of saying, yeah. But usually people refer to as properties, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me let me see if on 168 you will see the assignment soon because I haven't published it yet, but all of this oops, I thought I saved it. Maybe I changed it somewhere else. Okay. All right. I'm gonna give you homework. I thought I put just before that I was saving it, and then I think I messed up or something. But anyway, I'll update the assignment. It will be similar to what you saw. I'll give you an object, and you'll have to use for loop or if statement to make some decisions. Okay. Yeah. So something like that. Okay. And I'll publish it after the class today. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think we are 5 minutes over. Any last questions? Okay.
You mentioned something about, I forgot what was the name now, like the word description of the problem. Like the homework we have for next week.
Yeah, so this would be, I'll give you some objects like a profile or something, right? And then inside you have to, like add all the ages or how much money these people have or something like that. So you have to use some for loop and way to access the elements, similar to what we did here.
No, I meant like the homework from the week before.
Oh, type of problem you said?
I forgot the term you used, but yeah,
Oh,
it's just
okay.
like
Oh, okay. Pseudocode.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, pseudocode. Yeah, so the pseudocode I explained, right? So you basically break it down into a simple, so you can do manually, right? So let's say if I want to add all the numbers, I would say, I have this array. I'm just going to take the first number, add it to the total, take the second number, add it to the total. If I say 3, then I'm not going to add it, so that's a pseudocode. So you need to write that, logic, and then say, okay, now how do I translate this into code?
Right.
Okay. So that is a pseudocode. How you write pseudocode is up to you. You can write,
Right.
oh, go through each number, right? That would be one of the key, right? Pseudocode means whatever language is comfortable to you in that sense. It doesn't have to be programming language. It's just a common sense language in a way, right? So yeah.
I think
And then
sometimes it's the
translate.
problem understanding the problem the
That's
right
the thing.
way.
Exactly.
Right.
So first understand the problem. So these are the steps. If you just go and hone in on the solution, most of the time you're gonna have problems. You are not gonna get that because of the complexity of problem, right? Instead, first understand the problem. What you're trying to say. Then, just in a simple language, try to solve it, right? Oh, if I pass 20, so usually I would give you an example. If this is the something you pass, this should be the answer, right? In that example, we just say, okay, if you have 35, if you bought something with 35 cents, this is the answer. You get 2 quarters, 1 nickel, and 1 dime or something, right? So then it's like, how does that really work? That math. So you just draw out the math, right? So that's the process of understanding the problem. Then you can say, okay, I'm going to take a different example, look at it, right? And then you build your algorithm by writing a pseudocode around it, right? And then say, okay, let's say I have to do the loop, which means I need a for loop. I have to make a decision. I need an if statement, right? If it's a array, I need to use a for off loop. If it's an object, I need to use this. So this is how you want to then translate. If you don't do that process, you're always going to get stuck. Believe me, because if you look at problem, if you don't look at problem holistically, you're gonna get in trouble because your brain doesn't process, code right away, right? Not yet. I can look at the problem and I can translate into code, but you can't do that because you're in an early stage of programming, right? So you have to go through that steps properly. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, I think a little bit like kind of like writing the steps, how you're gonna be solving it, and the way you can find sometimes there's some things that you're thinking they're not gonna work, and that's actually really good. Like because sometimes we get stuck thinking like, oh, it should be this solution, but when you start writing it down in paper, even in paper, like you will start noticing that this is not gonna work. So I would recommend to have a piece of paper and start writing it down how you will be solving it. And then you would like the steps kind of like.
And I would suggest just go through the writing on the paper first before coding, always. That's the key. Even I do that.
Whiteboard.
Yeah, just to whiteboard it, right? So, in a technical term, it's whiteboarding, but you have a giant board and then you just, draw stuff, right? But, if you don't have a whiteboard, take a piece of paper and start writing it, your problem, and pass different test cases. If I buy something for $1, what do I get? Because you want to look at also the edge cases where, let's say there's nothing returning, right? You buy something for $1, the machine not giving you anything back, so it's a 0, right? So you have to think of that way as well. Yeah. All right. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'll